All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Supporting Students Experiencing Homelessness pilot. This is the 2021-23 request for application webinar. So we have a new opportunity for funding coming up for these next 2 years, and we're just so delighted to see you all here to find out about the really cool opportunity. So to get us started, I think we'll go ahead and let's see here if I can get us onto the right slide. And we'll go ahead and get started with staff introductions. And I think, hold on here. So during today's presentation, if you could remain muted at least for the presentation portion, we will have some time, hopefully towards the end, to address questions. And so anything you can do to help us keep the sound sounding good would be great. So let's see here. So diving right in, I did want to start us out with some staff introductions. You will have the support of several state board staff during the development of your Supporting Students Experiencing Homelessness pilot applications. And we'll continue to have support from our staff through any implementation efforts and so on and so forth. So we did want to just take a quick moment to let you meet some of the folks that you'll be working with. So on the student support programs end of things, we have myself, Jessica Porter. I'm the program coordinator with the Supporting Students Experiencing Homelessness pilot, and I'll be your main contact for pilot-related questions, any application content, feedback, reports, allowable expenses, ideas, resources, etc. And so then I'm going to pass this off to Kate. Kate, are
Yes,
you
hello.
with us? Yep, yep.
Yep. Hi, everyone. My name's Caitlin Orellana, and I am the Integrations Coordinator supporting our Student Support Program team. And yeah, I'll be supporting Jessica, and I've already had an opportunity to answer some questions related to this. So good to be here.
Hi, everybody. So kicking it off for the fiscal team, I'm Dylan Gillick, a contract specialist with grants and contracts for State Board. And among many other duties, I'll review your budgets.
Hi, I'm Carrie Kaufman, and I'm a program assistant in the fiscal team, and I'm available to answer questions that you have with submitting your application in the online grant management system, OGMS.
Great, thanks team. And as always, we love to know who we have in attendance with us from our system. So please take a moment to share your name and college in the chat. Hopefully that will give us an opportunity to reach out to you after this webinar. If we haven't heard from you by the end of April, we would definitely like to check in with you and see if you need anything from us. So please do feel free to share who you are and where you're joining us from, and I'll keep us rolling because I know we have a lot to cover today. All right, so let's see here. Let's just review the purpose for today's webinar, which is basically to provide some funding background and overview. So we'll talk about the legislation that established the Supporting Students Experiencing Homelessness pilot and the current legislative efforts to expand the pilot. We'll also provide an overview of the pilot funding and timeline for applications. We'll discuss the application process. So we'll review how to access applications in the online grant management system, OGMS, as well as program requirements, budget forms, eligible expenses, and other details that will help you know how to apply for the Supporting Students Experiencing Homelessness pilot funding and understand how applications will be evaluated. We also will review the questions and answers process. And like I mentioned earlier, we're hoping to have a little time at the end of today's presentation to answer some of your questions. So please do take time to record those questions in the chat box as we go along, and we will try to get to them. If for some reason we run out of time, don't worry about it. We will follow up afterwards and be in touch with you about them, and then we'll also make sure that your questions get recorded on the Q&A document that we'll be providing on the Supporting Students Experiencing Homelessness Funding Opportunity webpage. Let's see here. I think that's it for what we're going through today, so we'll go ahead and move along. So just starting out with a little funding overview, second substitute Senate Bill 5800, which passed during the 2019 legislative session, created a pilot for 4 community and technical colleges and 2 four-year universities to support students experiencing homelessness. So we've actually had 4 of our CTCs engaged in that work already. So we have South Puget Sound Community College, Edmonds, Walla Walla, and Yakima Valley all participating in the current pilot. And as of yesterday, substitute House Bill 1166, which will double the number of CTCs and universities able to participate in the pilot, passed both houses of the legislature. So in accordance with both pieces of legislation, pilot institutions must provide certain accommodations to students that may include access to laundry facilities, secure storage, locker rooms and shower facilities, reduced price meals, meal plans, food banks, technology, short-term housing and housing assistance, especially during seasonal breaks, and case management services. These are just some of the possible accommodations that are specifically named in the legislation. Colleges may also establish plans to develop surplus property for affordable housing to accommodate the needs of students experiencing homelessness and students who were in the foster care system when they graduated high school. Additionally, colleges participating pilot must provide information to students on existing resources for individuals experiencing homelessness, including nonprofit organizations, the local housing authority, and the Department of Commerce's Office of Homeless Youth. Please ensure you are utilizing existing college and community resources and are not duplicating services. Proposals should highlight your commitment to increasing and enhancing partnerships to expand access to resources for students. With the passage of House Bill 1166, the pilot is set to expire July 1st, 2024, and colleges participating in the pilot program must contribute to a joint report facilitated by the State Board of Community and Technical Colleges to the appropriate committees of the legislature by December 1st, 2023. In addition to required reporting elements outlined in legislation, we will be collecting and reporting information to better tell the story of the pilot sites and the students served. The more we can learn, the more descriptive our recommendations will be for the legislature to support our efforts in the future. Colleges not selected are still encouraged to implement accommodations to students experiencing homelessness and track the same data requirements and an effort to highlight efforts, successes, challenges, and student needs throughout the system. In our partnership with the Washington Student Achievement Council, we will be facilitating a learning community for the participating colleges throughout this pilot. This will provide an opportunity to share proposals, ideas, and ongoing lessons learned and course corrections, and will also give us the space to coordinate our efforts for the legislative report and recommendations. Colleges not selected to participate in the pilot will continue to have an opportunity to participate in a statewide supporting students experiencing homelessness learning community that was launched this last year. We look forward to seeing your proposals and thank you for the work you already do to support students experiencing homelessness, housing insecurity, and food insecurity. Now we'll review some important dates and timeline for this year's request for applications. As you hopefully are already aware, this funding opportunity was released on April 1st. The Q&A, the Q&A document we briefly discussed will be available through April 29th. Applications are due by 11:55 p.m. on May 6th, and the state board staff will only be able to assist with applications until 4 p.m. that day. Please note this is 1 week before the Student Emergency Assistance Grants or SEAG program applications are due. We will be releasing the Student Emergency Assistance Grants program application or requests for applications next week, and hope you'll consider applying for both opportunities. In terms of the Supporting Students Experiencing Homelessness application, we plan to provide feedback in OGMS from May 7th to the 27th and hope to notify selected colleges by mid-June for a July 1st allocation of FY22 funds. Next, we will talk about the minimum criteria for applications. This is a competitive funding process. We will only be selecting 8 colleges to participate in the pilot for the next 2 years. Therefore, applications must meet the minimum criteria to be moved forward to the review committee for consideration. So the minimum criteria that we would highly stress you include in your application would be including a needs assessment. So your application must include clear information about housing and food security needs of your students at your college. Coordination with existing resources. Your application must demonstrate your knowledge of existing resources at your college and in your community, and a commitment to leveraging those resources, connecting students to the resources, and preventing duplication of resources already available. Your project proposal, your application must identify the specific new accommodations you propose to provide. So you may be already providing some accommodations, and we will be asking you to specify what new accommodations you propose to provide within the pilot. And please consider the amount of detail you need to provide this information in a clear and concise way that helps the review committee fully understand your plans. Please also include a clear demonstration of leadership commitment. So highlight the support of a project champion from your college administration that will provide ongoing support for these efforts and assist with stakeholder engagement, buy-in, and resources. Proposals must also designate a pilot lead for local implementation and connection to the state board and our learning community. Evaluation process. All pilot colleges must engage in ongoing formative evaluation processes that will allow for course correction and an annual summative evaluation plan. This will include, at minimum, completing quarterly reporting processes. We also hope to see a commitment to additional data collection to support our statewide effort to inform stakeholders and about students' needs and possible solutions. Please note, as always, your application must comply with fiscal guidelines, and only complete applications in OGMS will be forwarded to the review committee for consideration. So now let's take a deeper look into the criteria and what needs to be addressed in your application to be considered competitive. So in the needs assessment section, we would like you to consider and address some of the following questions. What data can you share about your student population and their needs, with special attention to number of students experiencing homelessness, housing insecurity, food insecurity, or who were in foster care at the time of graduation from high school? What data do you have about broader needs within your community? And what information can you share about students enrolled in programs and or are receiving services through your college? In terms of the coordination with existing resources, what specific resources, accommodations, programs, and services are you already offering at your college and or are being offered in your community to support students experiencing homelessness, housing and food insecurity, and or students who were in foster care at the time they graduated high school? Another really critical piece to this section is program alignment. So if your college is already providing specific programs and services, we want to see your specific plans to coordinate with those existing resources to avoid duplicating efforts and minimize barriers to students' access. Your project proposal, accommodations and making connections with additional resources. Describe the specific accommodations your college plans to offer and how students will be referred to additional resources. Again, accommodations may include but are not limited to providing access to laundry services, secure meal stops, storage, locker rooms, and shower facilities, reduced price meals and meal plans, and access to food banks, access to technology, access to short-term housing or housing assistance, especially during breaks, and case management services. We'd like you to include project objectives and intended outcomes, projected number of students to be served through each accommodation, and how partnerships with community resource providers will be increased, enhanced, or utilized. Also, please provide a project timeline identifying major milestones and activities for fiscal year 22 and 23, including when college and community stakeholders will be engaged in the development process and when accommodations will be available and additional reporting activities, etc. If you are planning to establish plans to develop surplus property for affordable housing, identify the property to be used, number of intended housing units that would be dedicated to this purpose, an expected time frame for development, and your housing management plan. In terms of leadership commitment, again, make sure you identify a project lead or project manager and a brief description of their qualifications and experience related to this project, and also identify a project champion. This should be someone with significant authority at your college, like a vice president, president, or chancellor, and describe their commitment to this effort. You may want to include a formal letter of commitment from this project champion as an attachment with your application. We'll discuss attachments in just a bit. Please include a plan for keeping the project champion informed and engaged in the process. The project champion may be called upon to help inform the legislature about the importance of the accommodations provided to students at your college, so it's always wise to set expectations accordingly. In terms of formative and summative evaluation plans, describe the formative and summative evaluation methods you will employ, what resources you have to support collecting data and measuring outcomes. Specifically, what metrics will you use to evaluate the accommodations you provide to students? And finally, supporting documents. Please attach the following documents in OGMS. Letters of support, so you must include at least one letter of support from your local housing authority and at least one letter of support from an additional nonprofit organization that you'll be partnering with to support your project. Additional letters of support from community partners are highly encouraged. Some of the colleges have asked, why are we requiring a letter of support from the local housing authority? As stipulated in the legislation, participating colleges must share information about their local housing authority with students. And likewise, we feel it's just as important that the colleges share information with the local housing authority about the accommodations they are providing for students experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity. always, we need to make sure that assurances are completed. So all sections of the assurances a document must be initialed, and then the completed document must be uploaded and attached in OGMS. And then finally, the budget and budget narrative. Applicants must submit a 2-year budget using the provided spreadsheet and attach it to the application in OGMS. So for year 1, your budget must not exceed $108,000, and the same for year 2, the budget must not exceed $108,000, totaling $216,000 for the 2 years. Obviously, if your plan is to support students and you do not need that full amount, please indicate that in your application as well. That will, if you create a budget that is for a lower amount than 108,000 per year, that won't disqualify your application in any way. It will just show us that you're really committed to leveraging additional resources. A couple other items to note in the budget. Administration costs may not exceed 10% of the total budget, and I'll discuss that a little bit more in just a moment. Also, the intent of this funding is to implement appropriate accommodations for students, which may include case management services. Therefore, staffing, salaries, and benefits are an allowable expenditure, and I'll discuss that again in just a moment. Indirect costs are not an allowable expenditure with these allocated state funds. Next, we'll talk about the budget in more detail. So let's just briefly go through those budget categories that you'll find when you download the spreadsheet from OGMS, and kind of just talk about what we mean by each of the categories. So this funding opportunity has 4 main budget categories. For accounting, tracking, and reporting purposes, it's really helpful for the application reviewers if you can take care to make sure items are budgeted on the correct budget lines and in the correct budget cells. So in terms of the administration line, that's where you will, or where you can budget up to 10% of the grant total for administrative expenses related to the pilot. This would include staff time for oversight, administrative requirements for the funding opportunity, like completing application materials and reports, monitoring budgets, supervision of staff or faculty, and associated expenses. Case management, on the other hand, those would be costs associated with direct support to students related to assessing the individual student's needs, communication about resources available, facilitating the student's access to available resources, and tracking the results of how that assistance supported the student. So I hope that that's clear, because it is a little bit confusing. Sometimes I think it sounds like administration would be more involved, but it's really just administration of this, the technical pieces related to this funding opportunity. Case management is much more direct support to students. So I hope that that helps differentiate that. Housing development, the last time we had this funding opportunity available, we did not have any pilots create plans for housing development, but that is written into the legislation and is an option, and it includes the costs associated with establishing plans to develop surplus property into affordable housing. Housing accommodations. We've organized housing accommodations into 4 main categories to align with other homelessness response efforts in Washington State. Those include homelessness prevention for students that are experiencing imminent risk of losing their housing. We also have emergency housing, short-term housing, and long-term housing. I realize that we might all have kind of slightly different definitions of those terms, and what we're asking for this application process is that you just do your best to think through the different kinds of housing approaches you're considering for your pilot, and then also record in your budget how much you think that approach will cost to be able to support students appropriately at your college. Obviously, if you need any assistance kind of wading through those different kinds of accommodations and any portion of this budget, I'm always happy to help kind of clarify what we mean by some of these terms. And lastly, there's a place for you to budget other accommodations, which again may include access to, but are not limited to food, laundry, mail stop, secure storage, shower facilities, technology, etc. You may choose to provide a housing accommodation that's inclusive of all of these accommodations, and that's just fine. Just please make clear that that's your intent in your application. All right, so in addition to completing your application in OGMS, you'll need to upload several attachments. First, you'll need to download, initial each section, and sign the assurances before uploading the completed form to your application. You will find the document for download in the Assurances tab in OGMS. Second, please use the budget template that we've created for the 2021-23 Supporting Students Experiencing Homelessness pilot. They are 2-year budget forms, and again, we have provided them for you to download. You can find this budget template in the grant info link in the upper right hand corner of your application screen. You will also find the guidelines document in the grant info screen. Please note that the traditional budget matrix is not available in OGMS. You will click a checkbox in the budget tab for completion, but fill out your budget in the provided Excel spreadsheet. Lastly, you need to upload a minimum of 2 letters of support to your application. 1 letter needs to be from your local housing authority, and at least 1 more should be from a local nonprofit that you're planning to work with to address housing and food insecurity. We know that most colleges have multiple community partners they work with on a regular basis to address students' needs. Additional letters of support are highly encouraged. You may also want to include letters of support from your local, county, or tribal governments that you plan to work with, but this does not take the place of the other 2 required letters of support. Once you have everything assembled, please make sure to upload all attachments in the Attachments tab in order for your application to be considered complete. The Attachments tab is on the right side of the OGMS screen. You can't delete files once they've been uploaded. Don't worry, we'll simply consider the most recent uploaded file as the file you intended to upload, or you can email us and let us know which file you mean for us to use. Now we will briefly address reporting requirements. So the Supporting Students Experiencing Homelessness pilot colleges will be responsible for helping formulate recommendations to the legislature regarding policies and practices to support students experiencing homelessness and who were in foster care when they graduated from high school. That means that we do have a pretty robust reporting requirement for this pilot. So, and that's really because the reporting requirements have been designed to help facilitate the process of developing recommendations to the legislature. So we have primarily 3 different types of reports that we require. The formative and summative evaluations really work together, so I kind of consider them one type of report. So first we have our expenditures reports. So we'll be providing a template that helps our pilot colleges track track the same categories submitted within the application budget. And we have our student served reports, which again will provide a template to help you basically report the minimum requirements required for the legislation or required by the legislation. And that includes total number of students attending your college during the pilot program and the total number of students experiencing homelessness or housing insecurity, total number of students experiencing food insecurity, and total number of students who were in the foster care system when they graduated high school. You'll also be reporting the number of students obviously assisted by the pilot, by receiving housing resource information, by being connected to a housing resource or partner, or by accessing any type of pilot accommodation that you've offered. You'll also be reporting the number of eligible students not assisted by the program and the reason why they weren't assisted. You'll also be reporting an update on implementation and outcomes of your pilot accommodations. This is, again, the minimum reporting requirements. We do hope to see your commitment to collecting and reporting additional data as appropriate. And again, we have that third type of report. It's our formative and summative evaluations. We'll be providing a template that you can use for sharing course corrections, technical assistance needs, key findings, and institutional learnings. Additionally, funded colleges must commit to conducting formative evaluation processes throughout the implementation process and report shifts in pilot design during learning community convenings and reporting processes directly to the State Board of Community and Technical Colleges when necessary. Findings from a summative evaluation of the project for fiscal year 22 and 23 are due to the State Board by July 31st of each year. The State Board will work with colleges to identify the minimum items to be addressed in the evaluation to fulfill reporting requirements to the legislature and effectively present recommendations to better serve students. Colleges will work with the State Board to share lessons learned with the college system via printed materials, a web-based forum, and/or in-person presentations. Colleges will also participate in information sessions with the legislature and by providing testimony during legislative hearings as appropriate. Colleges not selected for the pilot program will have the opportunity to participate in data collection and reporting to the legislature to increase information and enhance the recommendations to support students. Funds will be allocated to the colleges each state fiscal year, and fiscal year 23 funds will be released once program requirements for fiscal year 22 have been met. Next, Carrie will share further information about the OGMS system.
Okay, so we're going to go over some frequently asked questions about the online grant management system, which we refer to as OGMS, which is located at ogms.sbctc.edu. You'll apply for this funding using the OGMS. If you don't have an account, you'll need to contact your college's security contact. They'll create you an account. Unfortunately, State Board staff cannot create OGMS accounts for college faculty and staff. The list of the security contacts is linked in the slide. We'll make the PowerPoint available after the presentation. If you already have an OGMS account, you will still need to contact your security contact for access to the 2021-23 Supporting Students Experiencing Homelessness application. Should you have questions about how to apply for the funding in OGMS or have other OGMS related questions, please see the user manual under the How To tab in OGMS first. We'll do a brief demo on where you can find this helpful document. Links are available in this slide as well. Most frequently asked OGMS questions will be answered in the user manual. If your question is not addressed in the manual, start by contacting your organization's security contact. If your contact cannot help you, you can reach out to me at the State Board via email, which is linked on the slide, or by phone 360-704-1021.
Thanks, Carrie. So, again, please do contact me, Jessica Porter, with all questions related to this funding opportunity. My email is linked in this slide. Q&A documents will be posted on the SBCTC webpage for this funding source. These documents will be updated every 48 hours until Thursday, April 29th, and that is the week before applications are due. We will also be updating the Supporting Students Experiencing Homelessness webpage with additional resources addressing housing and food insecurity. Links to these resources will be available by the beginning of next week. And I think I just heard Carrie say that we'll provide a quick demo of getting to the webpage, but I think if you just click this link in the slide, that should work. I'm just afraid that I'm going to take us off into another screen where I won't be able to find myself back to the slideshow. So, but if you have any trouble finding the web page, please do let us know. We're happy to help with any resources that you need to complete your application. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and I think move us along. And open the webinar up to your questions. I'm sure there are a couple out there, so let's see. Feel free to either put that in the chat and or unmute yourself and let us know what you're wondering about after all that information. And Kate, did you see any questions come through yet?
None have come through yet. You might want to check and make sure there weren't any directed specifically to you.
Okay, I'll do that.
We did have one come through to the general chat. Can technology access include laptops if it is an identified need?
Sure. Yes. So thanks for bringing that up. So really, technology access is very broad and open. Many many colleges, when we started this process, had loaner programs. I think that's been even expanded further due to the COVID-19 crisis. So we are the legislature did not stipulate what could or couldn't do. They just said whatever kind of technology access is needed. And so that could include laptops. It could include any devices used to access the internet and online classes. We've even found that, you know, headsets and different kind of accessories have really come in handy for students just because of the nature of online remote classes. So, so it's really broad, really open, and yes, please do include your proposals for how you may support students in that way. What other questions do you have? Anyone?
We do have one more. Actually, it's a combination. Are there any recommendations or expectations on the budget expenditure allocations? For example, is it expected that the majority of a project budget goes towards case management?
So actually, no, there's no expectation there. We we are really looking for you to put together a proposal of accommodations that aren't being already provided by your college. So some of our colleges already have case management services or have some form of case management that they're providing. So in that case, they aren't utilizing the supporting students experiencing homelessness pilot budget for that portion of the support that they provide to their pilot students. Um, so it could be done in a lot of different ways. I would say that the majority of our existing pilots have their budget allocated towards housing and other accommodations and less so towards case management. That being said, case management is a really critical component of all of our existing pilots. And so um, uh, I would say it would also make sense for a good portion of your budget to be dedicated to case management if you don't have that type of accommodation already provided at your college. What other questions do you have? Anyone?
Are you providing 8 new grants to CTCs, or will 4 of the 8 grants go to the existing pilots?
Sure. Thanks for asking that. So I would like to be very transparent with everyone that the existing pilots have been invited to reapply. And of course, if they do reapply and meet the requirements of the application process, then they would be prioritized in this funding process. And that's because we would automatically have more data and more long-term data that we would be able to collect from those sites. And so, yeah, we will be prioritizing the existing pilots, and um, and we also have, thanks to House Bill 1166, we have an opportunity to expand that to 4 additional CTCs. So regardless, we have a new opportunity to expand the pilot, and we are really looking forward to welcoming some new CTCs into that arena. And I see a couple of our existing pilots on here. So good to see you joining us today. And we can't say enough good things about the good work that our existing pilots have been doing to support students. And we've learned a lot along the way. And so that's why I think it's so exciting that we get to expand this opportunity to an additional 4 CTCs. I also see some folks that applied the last go round but weren't funded, and I'm also very delighted to see your commitment to this work and your willingness to pick this back up. Hopefully you'll have some good stuff that you can pick up from your application last time and move forward with a new application. What other questions do you have, anyone? Again, I just want to really invite everyone to reach out to us with any questions you have along the way. Oh, we have another one I think that just popped into the chat. Can we use funds for facilities work like installing a laundry room? So I think ideally you would have some sort of facility like that students could access, but if you don't, then I think it would really just depend on, you know, what does that look like at your college, um, and obviously we are going to prioritize the applications that make the best use of existing resources. And so if you're able to uh, use the funds to create a laundry room and do it in a way that is cost effective, then certainly that seems absolutely appropriate. Um, I think there's, a fine line there because these funds are meant to support students experiencing homelessness. So obviously, there would be, I think, just a real um, prioritization of making sure that students experiencing homelessness are the ones utilizing that laundry room. So that's where I think it could get, a little bit challenging, but obviously, we want to make as many resources available to students. And um, so I think maybe we would want to explore that a little bit further offline and just make sure that those facilities are really going towards supporting students experiencing homelessness. Anything else? I did go through quite a lot of information pretty quickly, and so I imagine that it could take some time for it to all set in. The tricky part about this funding opportunity is the due date is coming up pretty quickly. So please do let all of that information kind of sit with you for a little bit, and then don't hesitate to reach out to us with your questions. We are here to, yeah, be a resource to you. We are, again, just delighted to see your interest in supporting students experiencing homelessness and this pilot process. We know that it's a lot to take on at a time when colleges are already taking on such incredible work to support students, and so we are really encouraged by your interest, and we want to make that process as easy for you to complete as possible. So don't hesitate to reach out. And again, we'll continue to field your questions through April 19th. That meeting we'll field your questions and post them to the Q&A available on the web page. Of course, we'll take questions up until the due date at 4 p.m. We'll be available only till 4 p.m., not till midnight that day, but you can obviously submit your application after that. I just wanted to again remind you that we will only be available for questions up until that point. So if there's no other questions at this time, I think that wraps up our webinar for today. And thanks again for joining us. And I look forward to being in touch with all of you and seeing your applications and your proposals come in. Thank you all.